Jack the Ripper. London, 1888. A city mired in darkness, fear and misery. In the heart of the East End, a slum of cobbled streets and decrepit buildings, life clings to survival. London was undergoing rapid industrialization and urbanization, leading to overpopulation and very difficult living conditions in areas such as Whitechapel. Extreme poverty, overcrowding, and poor hygiene create a breeding ground for disease, violence, and despair. Prostitution is rife, a way to survive in a hostile world where women are treated as objects and life is worthless. Unemployment and underemployment were serious problems, and many people turned to informal or illegal jobs to survive. Prostitution was one of the few options available to women who could not find employment in factories or as domestic servants. Women who worked as prostitutes often did so to pay the rent for a bed in a boarding house or to buy food. It is against this grim backdrop that the figure of Jack the Ripper, a serial killer who terrorized Whitechapel with unprecedented brutality, emerged in the East End of London at the end of the 19th century. This neighborhood was known for its high rate of poverty, violence, alcoholism, and prostitution. The lack of adequate lighting and the density of buildings made it a favorable place for a killer to operate unseen. His victims are vulnerable women, mostly prostitutes, whom he attacks in dark and lonely alleys. His methods are chilling. He slits their throats, mutilates them and removes their organs, leaving a macabre signature at each crime scene. The police are powerless in the face of the ferocity of the attacks and the lack of clues. The tabloid press is full of gruesome details of the murders, fueling morbid curiosity and panic in the population. Meanwhile, Jack the Ripper becomes an urban legend, a specter lurking in the darkness, a symbol of the decadence and misery of the Victorian era. Who was Jack the Ripper? The identity of Jack the Ripper remains a mystery to this day. Despite numerous investigations and theories, the culprit has never been identified with certainty. Many names have been put forward, from Prince Albert Victor to a Polish barber named Aaron Kosminski, but none of these theories have been conclusively proven. Some believe that Jack the Ripper was a doctor or surgeon, due to the precision of his incisions and his knowledge of human anatomy. Others suggest he could be a member of high society, someone with access to insider information and the ability to move around the city with impunity. There has also been talk of an artist, a butcher, a madman. The possibilities are endless. What did he do to his victims? Jack the Ripper's murders are characterized by their brutality and sadism. His victims were strangled or had their throats slit, and then viciously mutilated. In some cases, he removed organs such as the uterus or kidneys, which has led some to speculate about his possible motivations. Some believe that Jack the Ripper was a misogynist who hated women and punished them for their sin. Others suggest that he could be looking for some kind of trophy or that his actions could be related to satanic rituals or occult practices. Most of Jack the Ripper's victims were women living in extreme poverty in the East End of London. During this time, many women turned to prostitution as a way to survive due to the lack of job opportunities and the absence of a social safety net. Prostitution was a way to obtain money for food, shelter, and other basic needs. However, it is important to note that not all of Jack the Ripper's victims were necessarily prostitutes. Some historians, such as Hallie Rubenhold, have argued that there is no conclusive evidence that 3 of the 5 canonical victims were sex workers. Life in the East End was extremely difficult, and many women found themselves in desperate situations that led them to make difficult choices in order to survive. Discovery of the bodies. The bodies of Jack the Ripper's victims were found in various locations around Whitechapel. Here are the canonical victims and the places where they were found. 1. Marion Nichols, also known as Polly Nichols, was 43 years old when she was murdered. She had been living in a lodging house and working occasionally as a prostitute to pay for her accommodation. She was found on August 31, 1888 in Bucks Row, now Durward Street. 2. Annie Chapman was 47 years old and also lived in lodging houses. She had been working as a prostitute after separating from her husband and losing his financial support. She was found on September 8, 1888 in Hanbury Street. 3. Elizabeth Stride, known as Long Liz, was 45 years old. She had emigrated from Sweden and worked as a prostitute in Whitechapel. She was found on September 30th in Dutfield's yard. 4. Catherine Eddowes. She was 46 years old and had been living in poverty. She worked occasionally as a prostitute and was found dead on September 30th, 1988 as Elizabeth in Mitre Square. 5. Mary Jane Kelly, the youngest of the canonical victims. She was approximately 25 years old. She lived in a rented room in Miller's Court and worked as a prostitute. She was found on November 9, 1888 in Miller's Court. It was the most brutal murder. Reasons why he was not seen. There are several reasons why Jack the Ripper may have avoided being seen. 1. Lighting conditions. Whitechapel had little street lighting, which made it easy for someone to commit crimes without being detected. 2. Urban density. The high density of buildings in narrow streets allowed a killer to move quickly and hide easily. 3. Distrust of the police. The police of the time had a reputation for being ineffective and corrupt, which made people reluctant to cooperate with investigations. 4. Modus operandi. Jack the Ripper targeted solitary women in low-traffic areas, which reduced the chances of being seen. Main theories. 2. Urban density. The high density of buildings in narrow streets allowed a killer to move quickly and hide easily. 3. Distrust of the police. The police of the time had a reputation for being ineffective and corrupt, which made people reluctant to cooperate with investigations. 4. Modus operandi. Jack the Ripper targeted solitary women in low-traffic areas, which reduced the chances of being seen. Main theories. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish Jewish immigrant who worked as a barber and lived in Whitechapel. He was considered suspicious by the police at the time for his erratic behavior and hatred of women. In 2014, mitochondrial DNA matches were found between living relatives of Kosminski and a shawl collected at the site where Catherine Eddowes was murdered. However, the reliability of these tests has been questioned, and there is no conclusive evidence that the shawl belonged to Eddowes. However, the reliability of these tests has been questioned for several reasons. 1. Contamination of the shawl. The shawl has been handled and examined by many people over the years, which could have contaminated the DNA sample and given erroneous results. 2. DNA quality. The DNA found on the shawl could be degraded and of poor quality, making it difficult to analyze and increasing the possibility of errors. 3. Methodology. Some experts have criticized the methodology used in the DNA analysis, arguing that it is not rigorous enough and could have led to incorrect conclusions. Montague John Druitt. He was an upper-class English lawyer who committed suicide shortly after the murders. He was mentioned as a suspect by Melville Macnaghten, a senior London police officer, who described him as sexually ill. However, there is no conclusive evidence against him, and his suicide could have been a coincidence. Walter Sickert was a famous British Impressionist painter who was also named as a suspect. The writer Patricia Cornwell suggested that Sickert could have been Jack the Ripper due to his interest in the case and certain psychopathic traits that she identified in his work, and that his paintings held clues to the crimes. However, this theory is controversial and has not been widely accepted by experts. Royal conspiracy theory. One of the more outlandish theories suggests that the murders were part of a royal conspiracy to cover up a scandal. According to this theory, Prince Albert Victor, Queen Victoria's grandson, fathered an illegitimate child with a prostitute, and the murders were committed to silence women who knew the secret. This theory has been discredited by most historians. James Maybrick. He was a Liverpool cotton merchant whose wife poisoned him in 1889. In 1992, a diary purportedly belonging to Maybrick was discovered, in which he confessed to being Jack the Ripper. However, the authenticity of the diary has been questioned, and many believe it to be a forgery. Francis Tumblety. He was an American faith healer who was in London during the murders. He was arrested for indecent behavior and later fled to America. Some researchers believe he could have been Jack the Ripper due to his hatred of women and interest in anatomy. Bowden Endicott was a London police officer in the Whitechapel area during the time of the Jack the Ripper murders in 1888, who has been singled out as the prime suspect for being Jack the Ripper by historian Rod Beatty. The main reason Bowden Endicott is suspected is that he was a police officer patrolling the streets of Whitechapel at the time of the murders. There is no solid evidence that directly links Bowden Endicott to the Jack the Ripper murders. The theory that he was the killer is mainly based on his presence in the area and his alleged hatred of women. Arthur Conan Doyle, the famous author of Sherlock Holmes, was one of the suspects proposed in more recent investigations. Some investigators believe that his medical training and proximity to the area of the crimes could have given him the necessary knowledge to commit such brutal murders. In addition, the notebooks of a detective from the time have been analyzed, which reveal that Doyle could have been present at the scene of one of the crimes. The theory suggests that Conan Doyle, fascinated by the crimes, could have been investigating the case on his own and concluded that the murderer was a person of high social standing. To protect this person's reputation, he could have covered up his identity and left false clues to divert the attention of the police. This theory is controversial and does not have solid evidence to support it. However, it has generated interest and debate among investigators of the case. Also, Conan Doyle was also a member of the Crime Club, a group of amateur crime-solving enthusiasts, and took a personal interest in the case. Although some theories suggest his possible involvement, most experts consider it unlikely that he was Jack the Ripper. Other theories. In addition to these main theories, there are many others involving a wide range of suspects, from Jack the Ripper being a woman to the murders being the work of a group of people. However, none of these theories have been conclusively proven. The identity of Jack the Ripper remains one of the great mysteries of history. Despite numerous investigations and theories, the culprit has never been identified with certainty. We may never know who Jack the Ripper was, but his legend lives on and continues to fascinate people around the world. What do you think?